Invoice processing is one of those tasks that's tedious, but is critical for any business. Manually entering invoice data, checking amounts, getting approvals for large purchases, it takes time and is prone to human error. This project automates that entire workflow using AWS services and Amazon Bedrock for AI-powered data extraction. You'll upload a PDF invoice, and the system automatically extracts vendor details, line items, and totals, other items you may specify from the invoice, and then saves everything to a database and sends requests for high-value invoices. If you're working with a document processing system, or you want to learn how to build other event-driven systems on ABS, this project is a great production-ready pattern that you can adapt for your own use case. Hello, and welcome to Business Automation Library. My name is Masan, and today we'll be going through creating an automated invoice processing system using AWS that automatically extracts data from PDF invoices using Amazon Bedrock data automation and routes them through an approval workflow. This system will enable everyday business users to upload invoices to an S3 bucket, which is a cloud-based storage system, and that invoice will be processed and then written to a database. You can also include an approval step in which a notification will be sent to an email through SNS notifications, and then that approval or rejection decision can be also logged in the database. All the files are shared in GitHub, and the links are also in the description of this video. Chapters are also linked, so feel free to skip ahead to the section that you want. Now let's break down each component of this automation system. First, the business user will upload a PDF, and that will go into the S3 incoming bucket we designate. That then triggers a Lambda function, which will send that invoice to Amazon Bedrock Data Automation. That service will extract the data and output in an S3 blueprint bucket we designate. That triggers our next Lambda function, which will process those invoices into two main categories. If it's greater than $50,000, it will trigger an approval step where an SNS notification will send email with links whether to approve or reject the invoice. If it's approved or rejected, that status will be logged in PostgreSQL. If it's less than $50,000, then we'll just automatically approve that invoice and it will be logged in the same database. For all of our approved invoices, they'll be in the S3 process bucket. Anything that's failed, rejected, will show up in the S3 failed bucket. Now we'll go through the actual implementation guide. So we're now going to navigate through all of the specific steps. And of course, we can't do the full development here because it would take 4 hours. So this is just showing you the general steps that you would need to do. And then you can reference the specifics in the guide. Of course, again, I would highly recommend using Claude or something similar to help you through the different steps so you can actually implement this in your specific environment. So first thing we need to do is set up the AWS root account. So after we've done that, then we can go and create an IAM user. I've already created one here, Invoice Automation Dev. And we need to tag all of these policies. Again, they're referenced in the guide. You can only tag up to 10 AWS managed policies, and we need a couple more for this. So that's why APA gateway access and event bridge access are there as well. Those are customer inline policies that you can add to give those specific accesses. After we set up all of these permissions for the IAM user, then we actually need to create the S3 buckets for our configuration. So what I've included in the guide are the commands for AWS CLI to actually create all of these buckets, but you could also do them in the console. So again, in that console, I would need to sign into that IAM user. So let me sign into the console for that user. And I can go to S3. So here I'm looking at these 4 buckets that I've created for this project. Um, my invoice automation bucket, for blueprints, and the failed, incoming, and process buckets. So you can just create those using the guide. These commands, after you've set up all of your permissions, these will actually create the buckets in S3 for you. You can enable versioning on the bucket as well. So you want to keep going through this guide and setting up the various resources. For example, the RDS database, the database schema. As you can see, it's quite in depth, so that's why, yeah, I'm not doing it live. I do want to go through this step though. This is Amazon Bedrock data automation. So all we have to do is navigate to Amazon Bedrock, and on the left-hand side, we should see something called data automation. And what you want to do is basically create a blueprint that will enable the Lambda function to successfully extract the data and output it in a file that another Lambda function reads and processes. So you'll want to set up a project. You can create a project. I'll call it Invoice Automation Test 2. Once you create the project, you can do standard output or custom output. I'd recommend, of course, if you have a specific document type, you do a custom output, and you would then create a blueprint. So all you have to do to create a blueprint is select a file. So what I've already done is uploaded a sample invoice to an S3 bucket, but you could of course also upload this directly from your computer. So I'm going to grab one of those invoices from actually it's probably in process now, my process bucket, so invoice 2. It's going to, load a preview of that blueprint, and then I can generate a blueprint, and it will identify and extract all of the fields that I need. To double check this, I can reference the technical guide. So this will help me to make sure that the blueprint captures all these details. So after you generate the prompt, which it'll take a couple minutes to do, you can actually compare it to all of these specific items you need. Of course, for your own use case, you really want to pay attention in this step, because if you don't set up the schema and the exact fields that'll be extracted correctly, that'll just cause a lot of problems later when you try to write the results to the database. Okay, so it has created the blueprint for me, and this prompt will extract these following fields. So after the blueprint is created, I can kind of verify all of the fields that are being extracted. Okay, so after that, I will save and exit the blueprint prompt. This will give you a resource ID that you can later use in your project. After we set up our Bedrock data automation blueprint, we then need to set up the Lambda functions that will do the processing of the various files. The first one we need to set up is Bedrock trigger function. Let me open this up. And what this function does is it's triggered when a PDF is landed in the incoming S3 bucket. It calls the data automation API and passes it the PDF location. Then it extracts the bucket and key from the S3 event and invokes the Bedrock async API. It tags a PDF with the Bedrock job ID as well, so we can track it for later. The second function we have is the invoice processor function, which does the majority of the heavy lifting in processing the um, invoice into our database. So once the Bedrock data automation finishes processing, it writes a result.json file to the blueprint bucket, which then triggers this function. So first, it needs to read all the JSON and extract the invoice fields, vendor information, line items, totals, and dates. Then it applies business logic. So if the total amount is under $50,000, it'll get auto approved. And if it's greater than $50,000, it'll be set to pending review. It connects to PostgreSQL using credentials from Secret Manager and inserts records into the database table, either creating or updating the vendor, customer, and invoice records. For high-value invoices, it publishes a message to SNS with details and approval links. And finally, it moves the original PDF to either process or failed buckets based on the outcome. So one thing to note is, since this is on Windows that I built it, it uses PG or PostgreSQL for PostgreSQL connectivity. On Windows, you'll need to install the mini Linux version for Lambda compatibility. So that's specified in the guide, of course, in the Lambda functions, invoice processor function. You'll actually see the way in which you install the binary function, because it's not compatible with Windows, so you have to install the Linux friendly version. Okay. The third function is the invoice approval function. This is the third Lambda function that handles the approval workflow. So after someone clicks the approved or reject link in the email, API Gateway passes the request to this function. It then extracts the invoice ID and action from the query parameters. It connects to the database and updates the invoice status. So that's really it. It basically takes the SNS notification result and updates the database. After setting up our Lambda functions, we then need to set up our event triggers and notifications. And specifically the S3 event notifications, that's kind of like the glue that connects our system. And so first thing we need to do is configure the incoming bucket to trigger the Bedrock trigger note function when any PDF file is uploaded. So this we can all, execute from the command line. I highly recommend just following this guide to add all those specific triggers. So these event-driven triggers means that the system will scale automatically, whether you upload one function or one invoice or 500, each one is going to get processed independently. Of course, you'll need to make sure that S3 has permission to invoke the Lambda functions. After you set up your S3 event triggers, you'll need to set up SNS and API Gateway for your email approval notification. So first, you'll need to create an SNS topic and subscribe your specified email address. I'm just using automatedglobe@gmail.com. And make sure you click to confirm the email subscription. And then for API Gateway, you'll need to create a REST API with an approved endpoint that gets requests, or that accepts GET requests from with invoice ID and action parameters. So this endpoint would integrate with the invoice approval function using Lambda proxy integration. Again, that's all quite technical. I just recommend following the guide, and it tells you exactly how to set up all of these resources, including API Gateway, if you wanted to set up that approval deny method. Okay, so now we've built all the individual components, and we actually get to see this system in action. So the first thing I'll do is actually query the database. just to ensure that there's nothing in there. So right now there's no invoices in this database. And so all we need to do is upload an invoice into this incoming bucket that we designated. This is the bucket that receives the invoice and kicks off the entire workflow. So I'm just a regular business user and I will upload an invoice. So let's look at this invoice ourselves, Acme Corporation, invoice 001, and these various services totaling up to $26,000. So I'll just drag and drop this into the S3 bucket. I'll hit upload. And so now we just wait for the automation to take place. One way we can do that is I'll just refresh this bucket. It's already empty, which means the automation successfully triggered. So let's see. Let's query the database, and it hasn't shown up yet. So we'll just wait probably 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, now the invoice actually shows up. And so we can see it matches all those details we showed before. So we can verify that it actually went through. Next thing we can do is upload an invoice that's greater than $50,000 to just make sure our approval workflow is set up correctly. So let's see, I think invoice 6 is $70,000, so that should work. And so let me go back to the incoming bucket and I'll upload this invoice that's greater than $50,000. So again, we'll just wait for that to trigger. It successfully triggers because our incoming bucket is empty. And now let's see, we'll trigger this. We'll see if it's in the database yet. We'll probably have to wait 10, 15 seconds. Okay, so now it's here, and we can see that it's in the database, but it's pending review. So that probably means we have a email requesting an accept or approve or deny. So let's actually go to our email, and we see that the high value invoice is requesting approval. So we verify the details here, $70,000. Okay, and it exceeds the $50,000 threshold that we set. So I can either approve or reject this. So this first one, let's just reject it. So this nice screen shows up showing us that we actually rejected this. And now when I query the database, it should show up as rejected. So it that quickly updated the database, and now I can see that the invoice is rejected. I guess we could do one more test and just make sure that if it's approved, then that will also flow through. So let's find another invoice that's greater than $50,000. This third one, invoice 3, it is, yeah, $50,000. And so we'll upload this next. Let me exit out of these. Okay, so I'll upload my invoice 3. So this one should also trigger an email at any point. Let's just watch our email, and I'm sure a notification will come through soon. Okay, so the notification came through. We can see it's that same invoice, 50,84753. In this one, let's approve it. So again, I'm going to check my database. I'm seeing that this invoice 3 is pending review. So I'll just approve this one. Okay, so now I've approved it, and I should be able to query the database again. And now it shows me approved or rejected. Cool. All right, so now we've proven this automation works, and so we can go and actually visualize this information through a dashboard. I'd recommend in an enterprise environment or even a small medium business that you choose analytics provider, maybe Power BI, Tableau, Amazon QuickSight. These can support businesses in managing credentials to log in so you have a secure environment. They also have row level security, integration, column level security that will help you to provide the users with the data they need and not just expose them to everything. With that being said, this is just more of a conceptual dashboard that is simply created through a Python script. So it's in the GitHub folder in analytics dashboard.py in the scripts folder. You run this and it will actually, connect to your database and then generate a dashboard like so. So this is just summarizing the invoices that we processed so far. So what's been the volume over time per month? What's the status of our various dashboards? So remember, we approved two and rejected one. Who is our top vendors or customers, and then kind of like listing what are the recent invoices by the process time. So that's really it. We've now shown the full scope of this automation. I also want to include a section called cost, time, and skill. In this section, I want to explore how much you can expect to spend on a solution like this, processing documents through Bedrock data automation and then storing them in an RDS database. Um, for the cost in a production environment, there's two main categories. One is Bedrock data automation. You'll be spending around 4 cents per custom page that is processed. So imagine an invoice could be anywhere from 1 to 2 pages, up to 1,000 invoices a month. At the top of the range, you could be spending $40 to process all of those invoices. And then for your database, there's different configurations you can implement, but in general, you're looking at around $15 to have that up. Those are the two main costs, and so you'll probably incur anywhere from $50 to $60 a month to run this. In terms of time and skill to implement this, with AI nowadays, we can, use a prompt with specific directions, which is why I've included this guide so that you can, give it all the material it needs to help you build this project. Although I will say more familiarity with development or AWS services in general will give you an edge. For me, I was able to build this in around 4 to 5 hours. That's because I have a lot of experience with these technologies, but I would say someone who's just starting out and maybe just a regular person that wants to implement this in their business, it might take them up to 2 days, depending on how comfortable they are. But I think it's doable for a beginner and for someone who's um, a little more advanced. I think they could probably get it done within a day. Okay, so that wraps up our invoice automation system built on AWS. The key patterns we covered, event-driven architecture, AI document processing, approval workflows, these can be adapted for many other business automation use cases. All the code, Lambda functions, SQL schemas, they're available in the GitHub repository linked in the description. Make sure you subscribe to build your arsenal of business automations to help streamline your work so you can focus on more important things like growing your business, exploring new opportunities, or spending time with friends and family. Thanks so much for watching.